Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're back down at work on our little F14, Farmall F14 tractor. As you can see, there's not a lot left of the basic part of it at the moment. Today we're going to be fitting the pistons into the block. I've put one in already, but I'll just take you through the complete process of the next one. So we've got brand new pistons. They come with a new gudgeon pin and circlips to hold the gudgeon pin in. We are reusing our old con rods with the small end bushing and the big end bearings. Normally you don't reuse bearings, but as this tractor is not going to do much work, it's just going to sit in a museum, and these bearings look fine, we are going to reuse them. Now we also get packets of piston rings. We get 3 packets. Each one is marked where they go. So this one is for the top ring groove. These ones are for the second and third ring groove, and these ones are the oil rings. The oil rings always go down the bottom. Now each bag of rings is slightly different. If we just get one out of the top ring groove, now if we look at the end of it, there hard to get a good view of the end of it. You can see it's just an ordinary square ring. This one's also been coated in phosphorus or something which gives it the lightish colour. Now these are cast iron rings, so they're incredibly brittle. If I grab one of the second and third rings, this is a black ring, but if we can get in here, and I can show you the end here. It's got a little bit of a chamfer on the inside just here, so it's different to the top ring. And then the oil ring is a 3-piece ring. There's 2 of these spacer rings and one of these funny looking rings here. So the first thing we need to do is check each ring in the cylinder for clearance. Now the pistons came with this set up in the cylinder, so I have marked the top of the piston to go in the same cylinder that it arrived in the box with. Once upon a time that was really important. Machining wasn't so good and everything was matched together. 2 things have happened since then that make it less important. Machining off the shelf has got a little bit better, so a standard piston is machined more accurately. And the other thing that has happened is we no longer really bother to match pistons to cylinders quite so much, but it's always a good idea to keep them the same. All right, we're going to go back over to the block now and check the fit on the rings. Okay, here we are back at our engine block. Now engines are always numbered from the front. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. This is the back end where the clutch sits. So we're going to put our rings into the cylinder now and just check our ring gap here. It's really important to have a gap here. As the engine warms up, the piston rings, or as everything warms up, all metal expands. So the piston ring gets longer. If it is squashed right up so there is no gap there at all, it's going to get bigger in the cylinder and it's going to bind against the wall of the cylinder. And if everything is too tight, it can actually seize your engine or break your piston. I know somebody who broke the top off their piston simply because they didn't have enough ring gap there. So we're going to put the ring in the cylinder. Now we want to make sure that we get it square in the cylinder, so we're just going to push it down a little bit with the piston. Now if you've got anywhere at all in your cylinders, you need to push your rings right down to the bottom. That's where they're going to be the tightest. Even with new cylinders, you should push them right down to the bottom to check them there. But just so that you can see how I'm doing this, I'm going to do this up the top. So there is a little gap here, and the manual will always give you the specification for how big that gap should be. If you don't have the manual, the general rule of thumb is for each inch diameter of cylinder, you want 3/1000ths of an inch gap. So these are 3-inch diameter cylinders, so we want at least 9/1000ths of an inch. So I've got a 9 thou feeler gauge here, and we're just going to put that in there, and we've got plenty of clearance there. So that ring is fine and ready to go. So we're just going to very carefully lift that out, put that one on that side, and we'll do the next one. Yep, we've got plenty of clearance on that one. Plenty on that one. And then we've just got these two little oil rings. I can see that one's got enough clearance without even putting the feeler gauges on it. Get bundles on that one. The same on that one, plenty of clearance on that one. Okay, next we need to fit the connecting rod to the piston. On these ones it's pretty easy. The gudgeon pin is just a slip fit through everything. Depending on what engine you're doing, sometimes it's a press fit through here and you need to warm this up to press it in. Sometimes it is a press fit into the piston and runs freely on here. So you need to check with the particular engine you're doing, but this one is a pretty basic engine. So we've got new circlips for it here, and I like to fit the first one before I start anything else. These tend to fly out and disappear. They really should give you a spare 4 of them with every kit, I reckon. But yeah, you just need to keep an eye on not losing them. Now, these pistons are not marked, but most pistons you will find have an arrow that points to the front on them. Now, the con rods are marked. We've got number 2 here and number 2 here, so we keep the 2 halves together. And these marks go on the camshaft, face the camshaft. If you have a piston that is marked, you need to make sure you've got that the right way round for the con rod to go the right way round as well. On this one, it doesn't matter. So the first thing we need to do is put some assembly lube on here. I use Lucas heavy duty oil stabilizer. That's what my engine rebuilder that I use sometimes recommended. So we just want to put a dob of that in there. And on here. And on the gudgeon pin. This is fairly thick, gloopy oil. It tends to stay where you put it a little bit better than the lighter engine oil. So this engine's not going to be running for probably a month yet. So we want something that is going to stay where we put it. Then we just slide that in and line it up. Make sure everything is straight, and it just pushes together like that. These are very easy to assemble. Make sure that pin is all the way in. and then we will try and put this circlip in without it flying across the workshop. The second one is always the hardest one to get in. There we go, we did it. The next thing that we are going to put on is the oil ring. Now, there's a number of different types of oil rings and they all assemble in a slightly different order. I usually put this piece on first because these two rings actually sit on a little step on there and help hold this in place. So these are quite flexible and you can just slide them over like that. The cast iron rings, don't try and do that with. You will break them. Be very careful doing these because you don't want to bend these flimsy little rings. You want the first one to go down the bottom. So that's sitting in there now, and this ring is now held captive by that. There we go, that's in the way it should be. Now it's a good idea if your ring grooves don't all line up. So we've got one there, and I'm not sure where the... Oh, there's the third one. It's not in a particularly good location, but that's okay. Next, we're going to put these rings on, and we want to put them on these second and third rings with the chamfer on the inside there. We want to put it with the chamfer up. Most pistons come, or most piston rings come with a little sheet that tells you which way around to put them because there's so many different types you can get. So you've just got to read the sheet and work out which ring you've got and put it on. Now we can't just spiral these on. You need to be really careful putting cast iron piston rings on because they break so easily. One way to do it I have seen is with 3 hacksaw blades cut down and put over all the ring grooves, and then you sort of slide the ring on and that helps you expand it. I got these cheap piston ring pliers off eBay. If you're going to be doing more than one engine, I would certainly recommend getting yourself a set of these. These were only, they were less than $20 I think, so well worth having. You can get some better ones than this, but I couldn't find any available for sale. So anyway, the ends of the ring sit in there like that, and as you squeeze the handles, the ring opens up and you just slide it on like that. It is so easy to do it like that. Next ring, we'll make sure we get that the right way up too. And this top ring doesn't have a chamfer on it, so it doesn't matter which way up you put this. Now, ideally, we don't want all the ring grooves lined up like that because when the engine's running, it will allow the hot expanding gas past them. So we want to offset the grooves by about 1/3. Now, the rings do move around on the piston when the engine's running anyway, so it's not that critical, but it's better if you start out with them in the right spot. Okay, so now we're ready to fit our piston into our cylinder. With these big end bolts, they've got a little bit of a step in the head here that fits into a step on the conrod. So you've got to make sure they're the right way round. If not, they'll sit up like that and they will move, and that means they will turn, and that will mean your big end is very loose. So make sure they're sitting round the right way. We're going to grab the oil can and put a nice bit of oil in our cylinder. Rub it round from underneath as well. Now this is a piston ring compressing tool. It's like a band that goes around it. So with a 1/4 inch socket drive, we can tighten this up and it pulls the rings in tight around the piston. This just makes it a bit easier to get into the cylinder. If you don't have one of these, you can use a piece of hoop iron that you wrap around here with a couple of right angle bits that you hold with pliers to get them in, or you can just very carefully work each ring in as you get it down to the cylinder. If you're not doing many engine rebuilds, you can do it like that. If you're going to be doing a few engine rebuilds, get yourself one of these. So we make sure that we've oiled this up nicely so that the piston slides out of here easily. And we're going to put a bit of oil on the piston as well. Now I'm not using the oil stabiliser on here because it can get into the cross hatching on here and it just means your engine takes a lot longer to run in properly. So I just use engine oil on the pistons. Okay, to install our ring compressor, we just slide it over the piston like that and do it up till we can't do it up anymore. Before we fit our piston, we are going to put some assembly lube on the big end bearing here, on both halves of this. Now because we haven't taken the crankshaft out of here, I have washed out all of these oil galleries by blowing petrol through them. So all of these bearings that are left in here are dry. And normally when you're reassembling, you'd put a fair bit of assembly lube on the main bearings. We're going to put a fair bit of oil down here, and this is going to run down into the main bearing to start lubricating that. So that it's at least got some oil on it, and I'm going to put a bit of this down there as well. That'll just help it when it first starts to make sure that there is some lubrication on all of those parts. And we can just squeeze a little bit on here as well. Okay, so to fit the piston, we make sure that we've got our mark pointing in the right direction. So number 2 on that side goes down, the camshaft is on this side. We slide them in, slide the piston in, and with the handle of a hammer, we just tap down on the head of the piston and gradually tap it into the cylinder. With my other hand, I'm just going to be guiding the conrod down and onto the crankshaft. Okay, so we've got our big end lined up with our on our crankshaft. Now is always a good time to check and make sure you've got it the right way round. So I can't see the number, therefore it must be on the bottom side facing the camshaft like it should do. Next we want to put the other half of the big end on. There's the number 2, so we want that facing down. And we also need to just thread this other bolt back through, which fell out when I was installing the piston. Now these have a castellated nut on them, which means they need a locking split pin to go through them once they're tightened up. A lot of modern engines have some sort of other mechanical locking nut on them, usually a nylock nut or a steel locking nut. Make sure you always use the correct nuts for these, or they are likely to come undone later. And that has pretty disastrous effects on your engine. Now this bolt has just turned a little bit, so I've got to turn that and make sure that's in the right spot. Now I'm just going to nip these up with this spanner for the moment. These have a specific torque setting to be done up to, and that will be in the manual. I'm just waiting for my copy of the manual to arrive. I think these are about 30 foot-pounds, so as soon as the manual arrives, I will check that. I will come back and I will do these up to their proper torque setting, put the split pins in, and then this will be good to go. Anyway, I hope you have found that useful. The same principles apply to most engines. If you just follow those simple steps, you'll be able to put pistons in most of your engines. So I hope this has been useful to you. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye.